Hello, everyone. I am from Brazil, but yo no hablo español muy bien, so better not risk to speak in español. So who am I? I am working at Red Hat as a middleware consultant, and I love coffee. Anyone? Coffee? And Pokemon. So if you play Pokemon, let's play Pokemon together. I'm playing Pokemon X and Y. So if is anyone playing here, let's play. I love Pokemon. And besides that, my Twitter is Hannelita. So if you wanna ping me, feel free. Let's talk about something very interesting. Mobile apps. Who is anyone here working with mobile? Does your company makes any application for mobile? Yeah, mobile is something very interesting because it's making lots of people rich. Yeah, since Apple Store and Google Play are very easy to publish your application, you can make money easily. So let's talk about mobile and the environment that mobile market generated for developers. What we are going to see today in this talk is some background about software development and its evolution. And so let's say hi to mobile world, the things that changed when we started making an application for mobile. And let's do the classical question. Do we need backend for our mobile applications? Do you need or not? Do you have backend for your applications? Also, you might have some applications that do not have backend. They are purely client applications. So let's discuss something about it. Let's talk about Ruby as a great tool for the backend for your mobile applications. And let's talk about something very interesting, a gem called Helios and how it changed the way you work with Ruby for mobile backend. And let's see some funny GIFs. I like GIFs, and some of them are very funny, or some of them are not. So let's talk about programming. Many people say that programming is something difficult, something easy, a crazy stuff. But in fact, let's have some background about programming. I believe many of you have born in 90s or 80s and started your college between this time. So by that time, the thing that you could see was your server and then your computer. And then you have an integration between the server and computer using a browser, right? It's purely common. And many of you might have created applications for integrating server and client using a web browser, right? Ruby on Rails is a classical example. And by that time, in 90s, when we didn't have Rails yet, the common skill set was the classic one, PHP, Apache, and MySQL. Do you know this background? Yeah? Yeah, PHP, Apache, and MySQL. It was pretty simple to use, but it could cause you some problems. So it was so simple. Even your cousin of 13 years old could create a program using PHP, Apache, and MySQL. But the thing is, when something is too simple, there is always someone trying to make fun of you. And something that is simple started to become a lot of weird names. And you had suddenly to learn lots of new stuff. Right, like Apache, PHP, and MySQL were not enough. So you had to learn many other things, right? So this can be scary, and nowadays it's not over. Since the past 10 years, a new component appeared to make your life better. You don't have only the browser anymore. You don't have that classical browser into your big desktop computer. Now you have mobile, okay? So mobile is something very present. Many of you might be with your mobile device here, iPhone, iPad, Android, and you cannot ignore mobile anymore, since now mobile is your bank account, is your email, is your personal trainer, is your clock, is your photo gallery, and is your main device for communication, right? So you cannot ignore this guy anymore. And talking about Apple, it is something weird because suddenly this guy started to poison many minds with the Apple. And then many of you have the Apple, the device, and it became very popular. And some of your bosses now forced you to create apps for Apple Store because it makes them richer. And what do you need to know to create mobile apps? Objective-C, iOS, and Xcode. And you need to know a bunch of new stuff. SQLite, Foundation Framework, C, C++, UI kits, and many other things related to Apple World, right? And, oh, it's not working. It's a pity. Please work. Let's try again. Okay. Yeah, I love this one. And this can be said because iOS development might not fit into Ruby developer's profile. And when you see something like that, you realize that no, life is too short for Objective-C. So you better stay by the Ruby side. And when you stay at Ruby side, you keep doing Ruby. And usually, maybe something like this happen, you can suddenly ignore the guy that is developing mobile applications, leave them alone, and keep doing Ruby. But if your application gets popular, then you have to worry about it. Because if your application is growing and growing and growing and getting more customers every day, you might have to do its backend, right? Sometimes only client-side is not enough, and you need some backend for many reasons, for generating reports, for generating more complicated actions, and improving your application. And whoa, now you have your mobile, and it has to communicate with the server, right? So you have client and server. Now your client's not your web browser, it's your mobile, right? So they're married. You have to do something. And you do not want to do anything related to Objective-C because it's complicated. And the Objective-C guy doesn't want to do anything related to Ruby because he thinks Ruby is mainstream. So what could you do? It's complicated, right? Some people do not like to change, and they do not want to learn new technologies. And you can choose a language that you are more comfortable. But there's a problem. You have to do the Objective-C backend. How can you do that? It's complicated. You do not want to do Objective-C code, but you have to do its backend. So you have to do a communication between a server and Objective-C. So there is something that can save you. You can ignore the Objective-C guy and also create a backend. How could you do that? Of course, you could use Ruby, right? So let's use Ruby to do the backend. It's a pretty nice alternative. Ruby is easy to use, there are a lot of gems, and the code is pretty simple. So what do your boss needs for backend? A simple feature that he could ask for is data synchronization. You have data into client, and you might have to synchronize with server. So you have data here, and you need to sync this information between these two guys, right? Another feature that you could have is in-app purchase. Who here does have an iPhone or iPad or iOS device? So many of you might have faced in-app purchase. You are playing a game, and then the game offers you something to buy. So this is called in-app purchase. So if you have never seen this, the same for Android. You are here playing a game, and then you have to do a transaction between client and server that involves money. And then they have, again, to change information. And one other important backend function is push notification. It's present both for Android and iOS devices. So what is push notification? You have client server, something important happens, and these guys again have to change messages to report something important that might have happened. So you do not need to do your backend application from zero. This is good because Ruby has many things that are already implemented in many gems. So, talking about mobile applications backend, we can talk about Helios gem. So you can keep lazy, and Helios can make the backend for you. It's pretty simple to use, and you can generate your backend in a few minutes. So what do you need? Usually, Helios recommends you choose Heroku, right? Because it's pretty simple and it uses Postgres as its default. You can choose another one, but if you use Heroku, it's going to be very, very fast to make your backend environment. So all you need to do is install Helios gem install Helios. Then you create your application, Helios new your application. And then this application is going to use Postgres by default, so that's why they recommend Heroku. And then you can integrate these guys. You deploy your application to Heroku, it's pretty simple. And then you start the Helios server, and then you access the admin. You are going to see a screen where you can have the control of basic backend functions, the ones that I mentioned before. And then, if you access Helios server, you can enable or disable these functions, as I'm going to show you. With Helios, you can have data model synchronization, in-app purchase, and push notifications. If you have a Rails application, the same for Sinatra, you just have to add these lines to enable or disable the functions you want. For example, if you do not want push notification, you can simply comment this line, service push notification. So, talking about data model synchronization, Helios is going to create a REST interface for you. So, by client side, you are going to have your model made probably by core data, that is Objective-C library for creating our models on client side. And you can have your Ruby application, and then Helios is going to create you a REST interface to communicate client and server side. It's pretty simple, because on client side, all you have to do is to ask for Objective-C guy to create with AF network, for example, that is a framework for Objective-C, making HTTP calls, and then the guys will access your server. So it's pretty simple. You have all the REST interface made for you with Helios, right? You have also push notifications. For iOS, push notifications are pretty complicated to implement, and with Helios, they are pretty simple to use. For example, all you have to do is to ask for the Objective-C guy, install a framework called Orbiter. It's going to be pretty simple if the guy uses Cocoa Pods. So the guy installs Orbiter framework and adds just one line of code among his tons and tons of Objective-C codes that makes a call to register a token for the server, right? So you have your Helios server here that has a gen called rec push notification, and this gen is internal to Helios. And then you have Apple APNS, and what happens is that with Orbiter, when you need a push notification, your device is going to register Apple APNS, and then APNS is going to back a token for your device, and then Orbiter is going to register this token to your server with just one line of code, and then your server is going to notify APNS when something important happens, and then APNS is going to send a push notification to your device when this something important is registered by your server. So the good thing about these gems that I mentioned, Helios and the related ones that are rack push notification and the framework for iOS called Orbiter, is that all of them are open source and very, very easy to use. So you have here Helios, rack push notification, Orbiter. There is another gem called Houston. There is another framework for Objective-C that you can use that's called AF Network. All of them are pretty simple, and all of their codes are on at GitHub. And following the idea that Punch Girls mentioned, if you don't understand something, the code is pretty simple to understand. And if you still do not understand, you can tweet for the authors, and they usually reply your tweet about replying your questions. So it's pretty simple to use. And another important thing, all of these backend functions are implemented for iOS, but as it's open source, there are people helping to implement for Android. So now, for example, you have push notification for Android. And it's as they are open source, people are helping to improve its backend functionalities. You also have other nice functionalities like A/B tests. Helios has A/B tests, so do you do A/B tests? Anyone? A/B tests are important. Helios is creating some other important functionalities for event monitoring, report generation, and so on, right? So, thank you. I try to be brief to adjust the time schedule. So if you have any questions, feel free to ping me. Or I have 2 blogs. If you want to read some of them, feel free. And I'm on Twitter as Hanneli, so feel free to ping me. Thank you.